Hello everybody, my name is Leo, and with this video we will share a direct comparison between the Blackstar Amped 2 versus the Two Notes ReVolt. First of all, we will compare the features and technical characteristics of the two units with a very detailed comparison chart. Then we will hear more sounds in a dedicated section of this video comparing the tone of these two units, and finally I will give you my 2 cents. So I hope you enjoy, and please don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell, as it would really help me to make more videos like this. Let's start! We will now compare the two units checking out the following parameters: number and types of amps, cabs and mics, possibility to load third-party IRs, type of effects, MIDI availability, inputs and outputs, foot switches, screen special features, ADA conversion and USB options, latency, power dimensions, weight and price. First of all, both the units offer 3 preamps, which are a Fender Bassman, a Marshall Plexi and a Soldano for the ReVolt, and, allegedly, a Fender Deluxe, a Vox and the Plexi for the Amped 2. Here I'm not 100% sure, as the preamp models are not clearly specified for the Amped 2. Furthermore, the Amped offers also 3 power amp simulations based on EL34, 84 and a 6L6, where the ReVolt does not offer a power amp simulation. Lastly, the Amped 2 offers 3 cab simulations in the box, and many more that you can load connecting the Amped 2 to your computer using the Blackstar free software. On the other hand, the ReVolt offers 1 cab simulation in the box, and it is designed, I think, to be connected to an external cab simulator. Furthermore, the Amped 2 can drive a real cabinet at 8 or 16 ohms. Obviously, here it is worth noticing that the ReVolt is a totally analog device, also using a real tube, where the Amped 2 is a digital simulator. So 2 very different approaches used to recreate the amp tone. With neither of the two units you can load external IRs. In terms of effects, the Amped 2 offers 3 drives, 3 modulations, 3 delays and 3 reverbs. And please notice that the modulations, delays and reverbs are mono, where the ReVolt offers a booster and no other effects. Both the unit offer MIDI jacks via mini jacks. In terms of input and output, the Amped 2 has a guitar input, a mono effect loop, a mono balanced XLR output, unbalanced output and an headphone line out. Furthermore, it has 8 and 16 ohm output to feed a real cabinet, as I said previously. On the other hand, the ReVolt has a guitar input, an effect loop, a mono balanced XLR output, an unbalanced out, an headphone out and an aux in. So the main differences here are obviously the outs to drive a real cabinet available only in the Amped 2, that has also the possibility to have stereo unbalanced output for the internal cabinet simulation that can mimic a stereo room even if the effects are mono. On the other hand, the ReVolt has an aux in which is missing in the Amped 2. The Amped 2 has 5 foot switches to switch on and off the effects, and 1 for the tap tempo. On the other hand, the ReVolt has 3 foot switches, each one to be used to select the amp of your choice among the 3 available, and they can be used also to switch on and off the booster, long pressing the correspondent amp foot switch. The Amped 2 has a little OLED screen to be used, for instance, to see the parameters of the effects, while the ReVolt has no display, marking even more its analog attitude. And in fact, among the special features of the ReVolt, I would mention that it is all analog, and this approach, for instance, has an impact on the latency, as we will see in few seconds. Furthermore, the Amped 2 has 2 outlets for powering external pedals, which is a very nice feature that all the devices with external loops should have. Both of the units offer a very tactile experience with all the controls under our fingers, which is nice, especially if we come from an all analog rig. In terms of ADA conversion and USB capability, the ReVolt, being all analog, doesn't have any digital conversion inside, where the Amped 2 can serve as a 4x2 audio interface via USB, and the converters are at 24 bits and 48 kHz. And now the latency. The Amped 2 has a latency of around 4.4 milliseconds with all the effects turned on, and a little less with the effects turned off, where the ReVolt has zero latency. It just adds around 0.1 milliseconds if you turn the cab on, which is basically nothing. And this is one of the biggest advantages of its all analog approach. Not having any digital conversion or calculation to be done, the latency is basically inexistent. Please check out my latency test video in the card above if you want more info about latency. Furthermore, the Amped 2 has an internal PSU, where with the ReVolt you need to use an external adapter at 12 volt and 600 milliamperes. The ReVolt is smaller and lighter, even considering that it does not have the PSU included and it is not able to drive external cabinet. And finally, the price, where the price of the Amped 2 is 650 bucks and the one of the ReVolt is 400 bucks. Summarizing, the most important differences in my opinion are: first of all, the total analog approach of the ReVolt that allows us to have basically zero latency, but on the other hand, not providing any time effect or not offering the possibility to use it as an audio interface. Then I would mention that the Amped 2 can drive a real cabinet, which could be an interesting feature for some of us. And lastly, I would mention the amp simulations provided, which are different for both the units. I mean, you have a Bassman, a Plexi and a Soldano for the ReVolt, and maybe a Deluxe Reverb, a Vox and a Plexi for the Amped 2. We will discuss even further the differences of the two units in my 2 cents section of this video, and now let's hear the tone differences. Welcome to the tone comparison section of this video. And you know, comparing the tones of these two units is pretty difficult, because we basically are not sure about the amp included in the Amped 2. The Amped 2 has a dedicated cabinet simulation section, where the ReVolt is more oriented to be just a preamp. It has a cabinet simulation, but just for practicing purposes, I would say. Nevertheless, I have switched on the cabinet simulation of the ReVolt, that is a Marshall 4x12 Vintage 30. Then I have almost the same cabinet here in the Amped 2, at least as far as I know. As regards the signal chain, the guitar is going into a Lele split. In channel 1 I have the ReVolt, in channel 2 the Amped 2. Both the ReVolt and the Amped 2 are going into my audio interface. Now let's start checking out the clean channel for both the unit. I'm using here the USA with the 6L6, as it should be a Deluxe Reverb with all the controls set to none. And here we have a simulation of the Bassman, still with everything to none. They should sound pretty differently, because a Bassman is pretty different from a Deluxe Reverb. Let's check it out. ReVolt, Amped 2. As expected, they are pretty different. The ReVolt has obviously a lot more bass, where the Amped 2 has more pronounced high frequencies. Now let's try to get the same tone. I would remove some bass from the ReVolt, adding some treble and on the other hand, in the Amped 2, I would do exactly the opposite thing. Revolt, Amped, well, it is really hard to match the tone. I think I have two nice tones, even if they are pretty different, so it really depends which one you like the most. And now let's try to push the gain to the maximum level for both the unit. So they both stay pretty clean and they both have a really different tonal imprinting, I would say. I like them both. I'm not really able to tell which one is better than the other. It really depends from your personal preferences. And now let's check out the crunch channel, which is a plexi for the Revolt and should be Vox for the Amped 2. Let's start with everything in the middle. Revolt. Amped. Pretty different tonal imprinting. Maybe the correspondent channel for the Amped 2 is the Classic. They are much more similar. I have to say that I prefer more the tonal imprinting of the Revolt for these channels. I mean, the Revolt here is, I think, a little bit more musical, I would say. I found the Amped 2 a little bit more harsh. Maybe the UK is better. Rising the gain. Here also the cabinet can introduce a lot of differences and it's really hard to match these two cabinets, so take this comparison with a grain of salt. Nevertheless, I have to say that I prefer the Revolt in terms of distorted tones. The clean ones are actually both enjoyable, where the distorted ones, I prefer the Revolt. I found it a little bit more musical. Let's go in the high gain territories. So Classic here, EL34. Now the noise starts to rise up for both the units. As I said in the Amped 2 demo review, I found more difficult to get an EQ for the Amped 2 that I like. I see myself in my digital audio workstation to try to adjust the equalization of the tone I'm getting from the Amped 2. So at the end here is very hard to give you a black and white opinion. They have both their strength and weaknesses. In terms of clean tones, I like both. In terms of distorted tones, I like a little bit more the crunchiness, I would say, of the ReVolt, especially with the Marshall. I think that the lead tone, the Soldano, needs less equalization compared to the Amped 2. That, on the other hand, respond pretty well to your touch, and it provides you a nice feeling under your fingers. But well, I think that, as I was saying, it's really a matter of personal preferences. All in all, I would say that maybe the ReVolt has a slight advantage in terms of how it fits with my playing style, but I'm sure that someone with different playing styles and with a different taste than mine can enjoy also the Amped 2. And now let's go to the final section of this video with my 2 cents. Final considerations here, and please notice that these are gonna be my personal opinions for my specific use case, and of course you may not agree with me, and this is totally fine. First of all, at the beginning I thought that these 2 pedals were so different in terms of features that a direct comparison would have been not worth it. But then I received a lot of requests for a direct comparison video, and I realized that it actually makes more sense than I thought. In fact, in terms of form factor, they are similar. They both can be used to build a complete ampless pedalboard. They both mimic 3 different amps, etc. But there are also a lot of differences. For instance, the ReVolt is totally analog, even including a real tube, where the Amped 2 is digital. The Amped 2 can drive a real speaker, where the ReVolt cannot, etc. The ReVolt has 0 latency, where the Amped 2, being digital, introduces 4.4 milliseconds of latency, and so on and so forth. You can verify all the differences checking out the comparison chart used previously in the video. Now, as I think that getting one or the other is really a matter of personal preferences and what you really need, here I just would like to share my use case that maybe could be of interest for some of you. First of all, in the last years I have become used to stereo delays and modulations, and for me it is really hard to go back to mono time effects. Second, I don't need to drive a real speaker, as for me what I would really like to do with these devices is to build a totally ampless and portable pedalboard. Third, I would like to build an ampless pedalboard around my favorite pedals in order to be able to obtain a very distinctive tone. A tone that is the fruit of my playing style, but also of the combination of effects I use, a combination that could be pretty unique. Therefore, at the end, I would go with the ReVolt. I know that the Amped 2 is a more complete unit that can also serve as an audio interface, that can drive a real cabinet, etc. But the concept of this type of units for me is to build an ampless pedalboard around them, with my own drive, my own chorus, my own delay, etc. Otherwise, I would just pick up an amp modeling pedalboard having much more effects, amps and cabs compared to the Amped 2. And therefore the ReVolt is a more appropriate device to build my own pedalboard with my own effects, trying to get the most unique tone possible. I know that this is a pretty personal opinion, and that's why I think that your opinions in the comment section are really important. Which one of the 2 units do you prefer? Why? Please let me know your precious and valuable opinions in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and ring the bell. And if you want to help the channel, check out my IRs following the link in the card above, or check out the gear in my outlet, following the link in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, bye bye and see you soon.